Hello everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of Frontios, the third story of the 21st season of classic Doctor Who, starring Peter Davison as the Fifth Doctor. Frontios is the 133rd story overall. It's 4 parts long and is written by Christopher H. Bidmead. So the plot for Frontios is as follows. An irresistible force draws the TARDIS into the barren surface of Frontios, where in the far future the last surviving humans cower amongst the ruins of the wrecked spacecraft. Under constant threat from lethal meteorite bombardments, few of the doomed colony members realize that the ground of Frontios itself is opening up and devours the unwary. Not permitted to assist, the Doctor's attempt to leave is thwarted when the unimaginable occurs. The TARDIS is utterly destroyed. All the while, burrowing undetected below the planet's crust, sickening alien parasites prepare a gruesome and final fate for all humanity. So that is the plot of Frontios. So in my opinion, I think Frontios is a good story, passable and quite enjoyable. It does fall flat in quite a few places. The production of the story was brilliant, however. I did like how Frontios was entirely filmed in the studio, and the sets are fantastic, and I really like the whole last humans alive aspect on the planet. And this is obviously set in the very far distant future on the colony planet. There is a scene where it actually shows what the planet is like with the ship far from the distance, and I think it was shown on, I think it was a glass screen with the distance up ahead. It looked really impressive, and I quite liked that. The music was very good, and I really like how atmospheric it made the story feel, especially when Turler was having his mental breakdown. The script was quite good, and the direction by Ron Jones was quite good as well. I also liked the story's plot. I liked the far future aspect of the story, focusing on the end of the universe and the very last few humans left, and how the Doctor and his companions seemed to be stuck on Frontios when the TARDIS was seemingly destroyed. I did like how the story actually utilized Turlo and what he knew about the Tractators, and I get into more on that later. I did like the concept of the Earth swallowing people up, which did happen in the Matt Smith era with the Silurian two-parter, with obviously the Silurians were pretty much using the Earth to suck people in. That was quite interesting. That was also quite interesting too. Frontier did have some very good moments, especially the cliffhangers. And the part one cliffhanger actually does stand out quite a fair bit. When this is when the Doctor, Turlo, and Tegan seemingly found the TARDIS destroyed, following Turlo threatening the soldiers with the TARDIS, followed by Turlo threatening the soldiers with the TARDIS hat stand. Even part four, we had a cliffhanger, and this is which obviously led to the following story, Resurrection of the Daleks. I did like the reveal of Captain Revere being a literal part of the machines of the Tractators, which was quite grim as well. The TARDIS had been formed again and left Frontios, and this is the part 4 cliffhanger, and they ended up in a time corridor which takes them back to London 1984, where they'll meet the Daleks. So on to the acting, which I thought was quite good. Peter Davis did a very good job, and it's quite clear that he's giving it his all, that considering this is his last few stories. Davidson actually said himself in the DVD commentary that he did find the story quite slow to watch, which I do agree with. But he said that Frontiers actually finally got a hold of how his Doctor should be, and he's pretty much right, as he's not quarreling with any of his companions. He's actually trying his best to sort out the problems of Frontiers and not letting the TARDIS get destroyed get him down too much. I did like how that he allowed Tegan to accompany him to confront the Tractators. One part I did find funny was how he was trying to pass off Tegan as an android, and he was basically making fun of Tegan's features, saying the walk is funny and she has a dodgy accent, and you just have Tegan just giving the Doctor the evils. That was also a very funny scene, and it shows how good the chemistry is between Janet Fielding and Peter Davison. Speaking of which, Janet Fielding was good here as well, and this is her final penultimate story as Tegan, and I think Tegan was well written here as well. She doesn't do a great deal, but it's quite possible. She does save the Doctor and Norna from the Tractators in part 3 when they get captured at the end of part 2, and she actually goes back down to the underground caverns to go after the Doctor despite being told not to, which is a typical Tegan move. But I think in the story, Tegan does become a lot less scoby and argumentative, and she's more concerned for others, and she's very aware of her surroundings, which has definitely given her character a bit more gravitas. And it's very much on display in the following story as well, and it pretty much shows how the hell that Tegan has been through ever since she was traveling with the Doctor. Mark Strickson, I think he definitely stole the show in the story, and this is definitely one of his best performances as Turlo. And I would say that this is one of Turlo's better written stories, and he's actually factored into the plot compared to just running around getting captured by security guards and just guards in general in his other stories. In the second part, Turlo has a mental breakdown and very much becomes very. He starts becoming not necessarily catatonic. He's very like he's in a state, so to speak, and he's just talking not necessarily gibberish. He's just basically like ranting like a madman, and he's actually remembering what the Tractatus did to his own planet. And this didn't actually happen to him, but he was this was basically like ancestral memories. He's coming out of his subconscious, which did contribute to a great deal of who the Tractators were and what their intentions were. And I think Strickland's acting in that scene was quite good, and he does a very good job here. And I liked how Turlo is very much a full-fledged companion at this point. Still no sign of Chameleon, even though when the TARDIS was destroyed, the robot was nowhere to be seen. So now onto our side cast, and they were quite good in my opinion. First off, we had Brazen. He was the chief orderly on the colony of Frontios. He and Plantagenet thought that the Doctor was responsible for the meteorite, and he was killed by the Tractators when he ordered their attack. Then we had Norna. Then she was the Ranger's daughter. She helped him with science research and helped the Doctor to aid the sick, and she aided Tegan and Tully in sneaking out a battery acid to help light up the phosphor lamps. She was captured by the Tractators along with the Doctor, but their attempt was thwarted by Tegan. I think she was a good character, to be fair, and she's played by the actress who plays Brendan Emmerdale, so I didn't expect it, but then I saw the documentary and she looked a bit familiar, and then I registered to me who she was, and just like, oh, really? I didn't even notice that, to be fair. Then we have Range. He is the chief science officer on Frontios. He went underground with the Doctor to the underground tunnels where he had to take care of Turlo when he was having a mental breakdown and returned to Tegan to find the Doctor. He was another good character. Then we also have Plantagenet. He was the son of Captain Revere and became the leader of the colony when his father was captured. He was untrusting of the Doctor at first, but when he was followed by the Earth to replace his father Revere as the controller of the machine, but the Doctor rescued him and he witnessed the Gravis becoming dormant inside the reformed TARDIS. And then we have Cockerill. He was an orderly responsible for watching the meteorite hit Frontios, and when Plantagenet had been swallowed by the ground, he deserted the colonists but returned after Plantagenet was rescued. And finally, we have Captain Revere. I don't think he speaks in this story, but he does play a vital part. He's the father of Plantagenet and the leader of the Frontios colony. He didn't want the colonists to dig up the earth, and the reason he told Norna was that the earth was hungry. And obviously, not listening to his own advice, he decided to dig up the earth himself, which is what allowed him to be captured by the Tractators. They needed him as part of as an excavation machine because they needed a mine to operate it, and they pretty much killed the poor guy. So that's it for the side characters. Now let's talk about the villains. Then they were the Tractators and the leader, the Gravis. The Gravis controlled the other Tractators mentally, and whilst they all could control gravity, whilst they were pretty much responsible for destroying the Doctor's TARDIS, but the Doctor actually found bits and pieces of the TARDIS on the ground, so the Doctor pretty much ended up tricking the Gravis into repairing the TARDIS, which actually harmed the Gravis and pretty much stopped him and the Gravitators. I personally found them to be very weak villains. Like they had a lot of power, but that power pretty much made them boring as hell, and that's what they were all about. They looked quite scary. They looked like snails, so to speak. This is what they look like. They sort of look like slug snail sort of creature. They had an interesting design, but personally, I think the character was just could have been a bit better. But yeah. So on to the fault of the story. I found that the plot moved quite slowly, especially in part one when Tegan and Turlo were trying to get the battery access from the ship, and that was just very obvious filler. And part one also overran a little bit, which meaning that some scenes had to be cut, which made things a lot worse. As part one was very slow until it was revealed that the TARDIS was destroyed, and as a result of the slow plot, it did make some of the plot a bit unclear, even after Toda's breakdown, because a good chunk of the story was just the characters just wandering underground. Also, for the track were very weak, and they had a very weak defeat also. So to conclude this review, I do think Frontios is a good story. It's very enjoyable. If Tenno finally gets some time to shine, but I think the faults of the story could have been easily avoided, and they pretty much ruined Frontios in my opinion. But maybe on a rewatch, my opinion would change. But who knows? So I give Frontios a 6 out of 10. My next review will be Resurrection of the Daleks, which is basically the first installment of the Dalek Civil War trilogy that was very much prominent in the last three Dalek stories in Classic Who. And this is also the start of the Fifth Doctor's swan song, and which first comes in the form of Tegan's exit. Thanks for watching. Please let me know your thoughts of Frontios and this review. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Until then, see you later.